the corn easily. But the defrosting of the chicken and the tubs of mayo, that's a whole
It's our thing.
These developers.
It's got to be useful. I just think it's like we work better together. Know each other a little bit. Anyway, that's just me.
Ready? Okay, I'd like to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Lake Worth Beach Community Redevelopment Agency, November 8th, 2022. The time is 6 p.m. Chris, would you please do the roll call?
Ms. Donna Kerner,
Here?
Ms. Ann Fairfax,
Here?
Mr. Daniel Morgan,
Here.
Ms. Leah Porch,
Here.
Ms. Caroline Basha,
Here.
Ms. Carla Bloxam,
Here.
Mr. Brenda Lynch.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Are there any additions, deletions, or reordering of the agenda? Is there anyone here that, no? Okay, seeing none. Is there any public comment on yes, Commissioner?
Good evening, Commissioner Sarah Maliga, for the record, your liaison to the Lake Worth Beach City Commission. First, I want to say thank you to Daniel Morgan for taking time out on Saturday to come out and help us raise the roof for a new veterans home on Northeast Street. We had a great turnout, and having the presence from the CRA board members was very important. He gave a great speech, welcomed the new homeowners, and I want to say thank you for taking time out. I know we are focusing on housing here and the great city of Lake Worth Beach, and I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago I met with Joan and a gentleman in regards to housing and staff, and I had mentioned the fact that Fort Lauderdale, Wilton Manors, Delray Beach, and Pompano are jumping on the bandwagon of not only 55 and over housing and looking at fixed income, but also senior LGBTQ housing. And it's important because most LGBTQ seniors don't have children to take care of them as they age. This actually just came to my mailbox today, and don't laugh, I do get ARP. I'm not old enough, but I do get it. It's great reading, and I actually read this because it's got good information, but in today's paper, it talks about who will care for us. So as we're thinking about housing projects in the city of Lake Worth Beach, because we are what we consider the LGBTQ community center and hub for Palm Beach County, can we please be mindful in thinking of our LGBTQ seniors when we're looking at these housing projects on fixed incomes? And it's been done. There's great community partners that are already at the table that I would love to do an introduction, bring them here and have them do some kind of presentation for you in the future, time permitting, so you can see what they've done in Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale, and what they've got slated for the next 2 cities. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on non-agenda items? Okay, we'll move on to the presentations. Item A, Community Land Trust, Cindy LaCourse Plum.
Let me just work this for 1 second. Good evening. I'm Cindy LaCourse Bloom, Executive Director of the Community Land Trust of Palm Beach County and the Treasure Coast. Thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity this evening to tell you a little bit about what we're doing in your partnership and your city. Okay, but first a little bit about us. We were started by Palm Beach County back in 2006, but we are a separate 501c3 nonprofit organization. Our mission is to provide a permanent stock of affordable and rental housing in the county and the Treasure Coast. And right now we have about 63 permanent affordable homes that we developed, and that's home ownership units. And then we have another 23 in the pipeline, and we have 80 permanently affordable rental units. Many of you may know La Jolla Villages. We were the partner in that development. Oh, So what is a community land trust and how does it work? Some of you already know this, some of you don't, so I'm just gonna give it to everyone so we're all on the same page. But a community land trust basically is a nonprofit, as I mentioned, that provides that permanent source of affordable housing by taking a unique approach to how homeownership is structured and how subsidies are applied. The model is based on dual ownership. So the land is owned in perpetuity by the community through the community land trust, and buildings on the land are owned by income qualified households who purchase at an affordable price. Exclusive use of that land is provided to the homeowner under a 99-year ground lease, and that is a renewable ground lease. What's really key is that ground lease, because there's resale provisions that say you can only ever resell it to another income eligible buyer for an affordable price. That's kind of how it works. One second, okay. So some of you were able to make it out to our ribbon cutting at 127 South F Street last week. I think it was last week. It's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Our total development costs were $257,000. Now, mind you, that's without the cost of land because it was donated by you, and we really appreciate that. The sales price, we were targeting an 80% AMI buyer, so the sales price was $165,000. As I mentioned, the lot was donated by you, and we received a subsidy from Palm Beach County, and that was $92,500. It was home Chodo dollars, and what's really cool is a lot of times when this happens, the money goes on to the buyer's purchase assistance. But in this scenario, it's gonna stay with the land, so that when it is resold, it's gonna be affordable to that next buyer. And we received below market construction financing from Palm Beach County Housing Finance Authority. This is some pictures of the inside. You can see the finishes that we use, solid surfaces. It's a frameless glass door on the shower, which I love, that's why it's there. It is a dual sink in the master. You just only see one in the picture. You can see the kitchen. We use stainless steel appliances, solid surfaces. We know it's affordable housing. Some call it workforce, some call it affordable, but affordable to the people that we're targeting. And they don't have a lot of resources going forward, so we try to build it as sustainable as possible, a hurricane impact windows and doors. So moving on, we're now starting, well, we're gonna be starting the North E Cottage Street project. And again, that's on 3 lots that you donated to us. And we're gonna receive subsidy from Palm Beach County. Ooh. Our total development costs are $847,709. And so the subsidy will be just under $300,000. The lots were donated by you. What's a little bit different this time, rather than getting a construction loan, I think Joan's aware, but a couple years back, we were part of a collaboration that got $5 million from JP Morgan Chase, and it was supposed to be for rental near transit, permanently affordable rental near transit. They recently opened it up to home ownership. So what we're gonna do is use that money to fund the construction, and that way we can cycle it back out and do more. So that's kind of exciting. It'll be our first project using that funding. And then 2 of the units we're targeting to 100% AMI, which is a little bit higher of an income than we sold the F Street one, and that's gonna be, the sale price for each of those will be $200,000. And then we're doing 1 at 80% AMI, and the sales price will be $165,000. And this is what the rendering of F Street looked like. It looks so much better in person. But it's gonna be identical units. We did change up the elevation somewhat, just because they are adjacent and you don't want 3 exact, looking homes next door to each other. But the finishes will be very similar. The colors and everything are usually, we give a palette to the home buyer and they pick out, what they'd like to have based on what we provide. This is a little bit hard to see, but it's the floor plan. I can send out the PowerPoint, and that way you guys can have it and look at it closer. But basically a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. It's laid out really well for the size of it. It's on a 25-foot lot. It's an open floor concept plan. You park in the back and enter through the master. And 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. So we're looking forward to future partnerships with the Lake Worth CRA, and I'll open up to questions.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board?
I have a question, just a basic question about the application process. I imagine that there's a lot of demand for this and a lot of competing folks wanting to get in. So what's that process like? How long does it take? And how do you do outreach to folks?
Yeah, well, the rain did wake me up on the way in. I'm definitely awake now. But so the way normally we have an ongoing application process where people we have an online application, they get in the queue. We go down on a first qualified, first served, but whenever we have a larger project or we're partnering with a municipality, we will post a date to say, okay, we're gonna start taking applications on this day. And so everyone that's in our pipeline, as well as anyone that gets the resources that we put out there, will have an even playing field to be able to get the house. we did it for the city of Port St. Lucie, and they actually built 6 homes with their NSP dollars. They were doing purchase assistance before, and all those homes are going to market. So like, we're not doing it that way. So they hired us to actually create a program for them. So it's their CLT program, but we administer it, it's, you know, through us. But we got 400 applications for 6 houses. So for them, we did a lottery, because we did an open house. Their prices are skyrocketing too, not as much as ours, but so we did an open house to show one house, because all 6 were the same, and we had the city helping us out. There's a line around the block the entire day. So we said, okay, we just can't, what if the system crashes? I mean, we use a Salesforce-based application system. It's very solid, but you just don't know, and that wouldn't be equitable. So we went to a lottery process. We gave everyone a week to apply, so that they could do the weekend or the evening or whatever works for them. And then we did a random pool, and then we processed them that way. So we probably got to number 40 to get those 6 qualified people, because they have to meet income guidelines, they have to qualify for the mortgage, things like that. But yeah, so it depends on how much demand we're seeing, but generally what we'll do is what we do with the county when we have a bigger project is we announce a date. Joan will have it, she'll send it out to her people, it'll be on the website, we'll notify all of our partners, and then begin taking, and whoever's, so people can get in our system now. They can go on our website, and it's an online application, and it puts you right in there, and we contact you back right away and say, this is the process. It's also on the website, but it makes it a little bit easier to hear from somebody. So they can get in now, too.
Would you please give us that website?
Sure. You ready? Mm-hmm. It's just Google search CLTOFPBC.org. But it is the HTTP, but that works. And then there's a tab that says Live With Us, and that's where you can apply for rental housing or get into our homeownership wait list, or pipeline is more like what it is.
So I think it's interesting how you're skirting like people who are developers or, you know, speculators, because you can't necessarily make a profit on it, or it's kind of capped, or how are you safeguarding that against speculators?
So for the most part, besides the city of Port St. Lucie, we develop our own housing. We hire contractors, but if that's somewhat of it. But as far as
somebody
Yeah.
comes in and
Sorry,
they buy
can
it.
you just pull the mic a little closer? They're telling us you can't.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
So somebody comes in and buys it, and then they flip it.
So that's what's kind of the beauty of this program, because a lot of times when you do a declaration of restrictions, that can get lost. A lien can get lost by a title company. It's not always caught, and things like that happen. But because we own the land, the person doesn't own it. So we're a permanent part of that transaction. So there's it's a leasehold mortgage, so one the bank knows. There's certain requirements. The bank signs on to our ground lease as well. So they have certain requirements, we have certain requirements, and there's resale provisions in the ground lease that says what happens when you do want to go to sell. But even more than that, let's say all that somehow is missed. Every year we do occupancy certifications, so they have to send us a driver's license, utility bills, and things like that, because we have different funding sources that have different requirements. That's the most strict requirement, so we just do it for everybody. So that's another way we're ensured that it's owner occupancy. But the fact is that they can't sell what they don't have, and they don't own the land. Their deed just says leasehold. So, and what's great too is that they're sold at these affordable prices, but it doesn't impact the surrounding community, because you don't want to bring down everyone's property values. So on the property appraiser's website, we're listed as leasehold properties, so we're not used as comps and traditional. But that's kind of, yeah, we have to approve the resale, and we always have the right of first refusal.
And can they rent it?
There's an owner occupancy requirement, so if they're in really financial distress and they need to bring in a roommate but they can't move out, they have to live there.
Can they add on to it?
They can add on to it. There's a certain provision in the ground lease that they can't like triple in size, something that's going to keep it from getting unaffordable in the future for the future buyer. But other than that, they can do anything that you can do per code. That's what you have to refer to the code. And we don't allow in-ground swimming pools because there's too much liability for us, and it's expense. You know, it makes the house more costly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
That was new construction that you showed us, right? That was
Yes.
rehab, and the cost was $257,000 for the full build out.
Yeah, not including cost of land. Yeah.
How many square feet was that?
It's like 1,200, maybe 1,267. And we're really lucky because in our last so many projects, we've partnered with a really good community-minded builder that does really high-end luxury housing. and then he's able to use the cost that he's, you know, with all his subs, so it's definitely by far the best pricing we'll get. Actually, the county's coming to us trying to get our contractor because they need to do replacement housing and they can't touch those numbers, so.
That's $200 square foot.
Yeah, which was so much less 2 years ago, but yes. So one last thing that I wanted to say, and I don't want to take up your whole meeting, but one of the key things about a community land trust is actually stewardship. So you're stewarding the successful homeownership term of that homeowner, but also of the physical asset. So we can drive by annually and look at the house. We don't go inside, just to make sure they're maintaining it to code, because there is a requirement in the ground lease that you need to maintain it to your community standards, things like that. But then we also, when we have buyers that get into any kind of financial trouble, we do charge a ground lease fee. The one that in Palm Beach County is $25 a month. And that way, if they're not paying their ground lease fee, we reach out and say, what's going on? You know, we also monitor to make sure, even though they escrow for the taxes and the insurance, we also do an annual search to make sure everyone's paying that, they're not putting liens on the property, and things of that nature, so.
Good. All right.
I was honored to be there, and I will say that the quality, and I even said, 'cause I'm used to another apartment that we had years ago, and the quality, all the cabinets were soft close. It was, I mean, all high-end inside, and it wasn't affordable housing craftsmanship. This was elevated, something that we could be proud of to get behind. I was quite impressed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor.
I was gonna add to that, I was also there that morning at the dedication, and, they have closets in these houses.
That's a big plus.
2 bathrooms and a closet, it was beautifully made, I mean, as I walked through, I was so impressed with the quality of it, and the fact that they had a lot of closets. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Are you New South Residential?
No,
Michael?
that's not something.
Oh.
You should have a new agenda on your.
Oh, I apologize. I had the wrong. Okay, we're gonna move on to approval of the minutes for the August 11th, 2022 minutes.
I'll move to approve the August 11, 2022 minutes.
May I have a second?
Second.
I have a question. Where are the minutes from the last meeting?
My understanding is the minutes from the last meeting will be available for us to approve at the next regularly scheduled meeting in December.
And why is that? I've never been in a,
It doesn't happen often, but there are times when, you know, the minutes aren't available in the meeting immediately
it's been 2
following.
months. We didn't even have a meeting last month.
Yeah.
I think it's unacceptable, and I would. Yeah, I think we need the minutes from the last meeting. I think the public should have them, and I think, you know, the board should be able to review them. And, I mean, it was 2 months ago, not last month. So, honestly, I think that's, what is the reason why it's taking 2 months to get meeting minutes out?
This motion is specifically for the approval of these minutes. If maybe we could have that discussion under the board member comments, just to stay on agenda. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion around the approval of the August 11th, 2022 meeting?
I have a question. Is
Yes.
that supposed to be the August 16th meeting?
Oh, you're
Or is
correct.
there a different meeting?
Oh, would
Yep.
the motioner amend?
I will.
Thank you. The seconder agrees to the amendment?
Yes.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any comments? All those in favor, please state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Action agenda A, the asbestos removal and demolition and lot clearing of multiple structures. Joan, you want to kick us off? Chris, thank you.
Okay, Elm Street. So before you guys is a request from staff to make recommendation or to approval to move forward with demolition of certain structures along K Street, L Street, and M Street. I'm sorry, not M Street, but Lake Avenue. This is part of the acquisition done in 2018 of multiple parcels in downtown. Since that time, the CRA has held on to these properties and continued to maintain them. Just this year, the city has gone in, inspected all properties and met with the building official, met with the contractor in April to come up with a price of renovation for certain structures. That price was passed on to the city in May, was presented to them in May. Their recommendation was to move forward on certain properties for demolition. In June, the CRA submitted advertised a bid for demolition. For 30 days, we received 6 bids back for demolition from 6 different contractors. Last month, the City Commission gave staff direction to move forward with demolition of certain structures, and those are the ones located at 710 First Avenue South, 704 First Avenue South, 25 South K Street, 30 South L, 32 South L, and 509 Lake Avenue. 6 properties total, 8 buildings in total. Based on the bids that we received, staff is recommending to move forward with the lowest and most responsive from Lotus Construction of South Florida for $115,000. And all backup has been presented to the board. If you have any questions, please let staff know.
Thanks, Chris. I look for a motion on this and a second before we have discussion. Anybody?
We're gonna vote on it before we have discussion?
No. Robert's rules, we're gonna do a motion, a second, then discussion, and then once the board finishes discussion, we'll go to public. Is there a motion for this item?
I'll move to authorize CRA staff to enter into an agreement with Lotus Construction to provide asbestos removal, demolition, grading, and sodding services for the 6 properties.
Is there a
6
second?
parcels.
6
I'll
parcels.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any board member comments?
Do I need to add to that for you to sign things? I missed that the last one.
I don't know, David, do we need to authorize signature?
Yeah, I would.
Can I amend my motion to authorize Chairman Lynch or Vice Chair Bloxon to sign anything necessary?
You agree to the amendment?
And I agree to the amendment. Second.
Okay, so you have a motion and a second, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so now we have a motion and a second. Is there any comments or questions or discussion? Yes?
I'd like to start. I have my comments written down, so I'll just, not to be making it unexciting, but I'll just read. So, my understanding is the 5 properties were purchased in 2018 with the penny sales tax passed by voters of Palm Beach County in November 2016. Just a little bit of history. The properties were occupied and rented at the time they were purchased. There was a plan to build the Element, but the project didn't have public approval and didn't go forward. As a result, tenants' leases were terminated, they were displaced, and the buildings lay fallow and unmaintained. This has contributed to the public's perception of demolition by neglect, and I feel as a board member, I would be remiss if I didn't do due diligence. I've received emails and phone calls from concerned homeowners who are interested in preserving the Old Town Local Historic District and are strongly against the demolition of these structures. All were bought with penny sales tax, therefore the city cannot sell the land to developers without having some use for affordable housing. So essentially, I went through, I can go further with those comments, but essentially I went through the itemized estimates for renovation costs for the contributing properties, and I'd like to consider that we not demolish all of them. There are some that, in going through the list, they have the renovation amounts and the current condition and reporting about asbestos or no asbestos. There are 2 particularly attractive structures. 32 South L reports no asbestos. It's a 4-plex built in 1935. It has an addition by architect Agnes Ballard. There's also no asbestos at 30 South L. It has a back unit that could be converted to a micro-accessory dwelling unit. There are some others as well. 25 South K, roofing and siding appear to be in good shape. 704 First Avenue South, it's a 2-plex, although there is asbestos that was detected. 710 First Avenue South, recommendation to completely demolish and build a new structure. I agree with that. 509 Lake Ave, the former Havana Hideaway, is listed on the National Local Historic District. It has the potential to serve as a visitor center and public library bookstore. I think we're all aware, this is all about affordable housing here today. I think we're all well aware of the enormous need for workforce and affordable housing, I'd like us to consider renovating at least one of these structures. As I was saying earlier, that I think the fourplex is a really good structure to look at renovating, as well as 30 South L. Let's use this as an opportunity to create workforce housing and to preserve historic structures. We could use the penny sales tax and matching grants to restore them. Demolition is forever, and there's no bringing back these structures once they're gone. I think it's the CRA's responsibility, as we know, in the City of Lake Worth redevelopment plan, to carry out historic preservation, and that's clearly laid out. Thank you.
I'd like to, just 2 comments. I don't believe that the penny sales tax obligates us to have any part of affordable housing. I'm not opposed to it, but I don't think that we're not obligated to do it, but we'd have to check. Maybe David can.
I can answer that. There were some properties that were bought, the city asked us to buy them with their money, with their penny sales tax money. It went to the commission first. And which ones those are, we can let you know. But the rest of them were bought by the CRA. And I also just wanted to say that people's leases were not renewed. We did not evict them.
Okay. And then I also believe that all of these, or not, maybe not all of them, but certainly some of them were advertised to people to kind of come and take them, and none of them were taken. So we've taken other steps, not just gone right just to give the full history.
Correct. I mean, this is not on our agenda because this is something the city wants to do. The city went through the process. Thank you. The city went through the process of letting us know which ones they wanted to keep and which ones they didn't. I asked what the next steps were from the city, and the city was go forward with your demolition. So I didn't want to do that before bringing it to the board for the board to, chime in on that. So that's why it's before you tonight.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yep.
Thank
Ann?
you. I'd like to thank Donna for her in-depth analysis and for having access to the report and all the advertised RFP to demolish or assess the condition of the buildings. I too have received multiple emails from citizens pretty outraged that the CRA it's purchased these buildings and then they were occupied and removed people who were ostensibly low income at that point. So we were serving our purpose. CRA was serving its purpose by having low income housing and then having them be empty for so long. I live on L Street, so I have watched these buildings myself deteriorate. However, the buildings are, they range in age, 100 years old, 80 years old, that sort of thing. These buildings are easily renewed. They're wood. They're made to be renewed. Asbestos, everyone goes a little haywire with asbestos. Asbestos is easily removed as well. It's not a condemnation of the structure if it has asbestos. It's just a removal process. I've done it all the time in my practice. So I would advocate that we keep the structures, and so I would go on record saying that we keep them. They can be moved, they can be consolidated, they can, if the CRA really feels like they want to aggregate these properties the way they have felt all along they wanted to do, we could take these structures and move them closer to each other and free up land that is currently, has one single family house on it. So I am curious. I think it'd be, this is a big community issue. I think the CRA needs to be very careful about what we approve, and I think every board member should weigh in on it and hopefully has an opinion about it, because I think the public needs to know how each board member feels about it. And I think it'd be great to open up discussion to the community as well.
That will happen after the board has the opportunity to have all of their say and questions and comments. I just want to clarify, just to keep the information factual, these were not affordable housing units. There's no way that we can say on record that the occupants were meeting any affordable housing criteria. Any other comments? Yes.
As with most things that come before the CRA, I do the due diligence. And this project was initiated with a joint agreement with the city and the CRA regarding the penny sales tax money and the purchase of the properties. This was not a CRA-led project. They were in partnership with the city commission at the time. Also, when this decision came up in May and October of this year, the city agreed, and the city gave the direction to the CRA for the asbestos removal and the removal of the property and the demolition of the properties. So I don't want the community to think that the CRA has decided that we don't want the properties. What we want to do is the best and highest use of this land. And trying to rebuild the properties as they are now is going to be cost prohibitive. These inspections by the city as well as others to say how much would it cost, actually in some cases it is more than the property is worth. When we had this discussion back in June, we looked on the property appraiser's website and said that these properties were not worth the amount of money it would take to fix them. Not only is it money, it's also time. And one of the things that you can do is if all of these properties were dealt with at the same time, then you can decide what you want to do in the future as a group, which would allow for a larger project, which is what the Treasure Coast is looking at. We have done the due diligence to ask the community on several occasions by charrettes and whatever, what you would like to have done with this property. We are not making the decision, we are trying to move the process forward. And I think that once the Treasure Coast makes its presentation to us and to the city later in the year, then we will make a decision what's gonna happen with these properties. All we're doing today is saying that they cannot continue in the manner that they are now because the people who live around there are complaining, the properties are dilapidated, and to say yes, if someone wanted the property, they certainly would have spoken up before now. They haven't, we're stuck with them as a city, and we need to make a decision as a city as to what would be the best and highest use for them. The city directed us in May and October to say, this is what we want you to do. We are working in partnership with the city, and we hope that the board will decide to continue that partnership so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Block's an excellent comment. I find myself very much in agreement, and one of the places that I keep finding myself contemplating are the people that live around these units, and have had to live around these units for years, and what they've gone through in living around these units. And in our mission of making the highest and best use of this land, I have gone through the property appraiser, I have compared it to the cost of renovations against our cost to demolish in conjunction with the city's wishes, and find myself, like I said, very much in agreement with Commissioner Blockson. So, thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. The properties that we have on the list to demolish are on South L. They were purchased with penny sales tax?
Only some of them were purchased with penny.
The 24 or 3032?
30 and 32, yes, they were purchased with penny sales tax.
My concern is that back in 2018 and then in 2019, when we eventually acquired all of these, right? You know, went through, some of them went through the process of going through the city, and then, but they ended up in our hands. Were they all in a condition of like where the best option was to demolish? Was that how we received those properties? Or is it the case that I feel some of the colleagues have brought up that we've allowed these properties to dilapidate to such a point where, you know, the only real option, right, for a lot of these is to demolish them? Have we been good stewards of these, or when we received them, were they already in that very bad condition where you saw the future of them was just to be demolished?
David Tulsa, CRA Council, you know, we handled the closings on the properties, and once the CRA acquired the properties through the funding that was provided by the city, The CRA and the city then went forward to the Historic Preservation Board, and the Historic Preservation Board agreed that the CRA could either demolish the properties if nobody wanted them, or, or give them away. So, the condition that they were in justified the either removal or demolition of the property at the time. That matter went up on appeal to Circuit Court. The Circuit Court agreed with the city's own Historic Preservation Board. And so the intent was, following that the CRA would then be able to. So, it's over time, they've probably gotten a little worse, but the condition they were in at the time they were acquired provided the basis for the properties for the structures to either be removed or demolished.
What I heard from you is that the Preservation Board said you could go either way.
You could either demolish them or have somebody move them when the development order came through. So, and the development order, hasn't come through yet, but certainly the CRA was within the rights to work with the city to come up with a plan for the properties.
So just to finish my comment, it's a real shame when we erase history essentially and things that make these historic districts so unique. My hope is that when the CRA is in possession of property and we're holding it on behalf of the residents of Lake Worth Beach, that we are not just, that we're being responsible stewards, and that we're not keeping it warm for some larger project that we hope will come in. I know that the commissions before may have had intention of building a huge project down at L&M. We've heard from the residents of Lake Worth Beach how they feel about that, right? And so I believe moving forward, we should really be more creative. Unfortunately, I wasn't aware of, never gotten into those homes back in 2018, much less 2019. But I would like to think that if they were investable, if they weren't exactly what is being quoted here for renovations, that maybe we could have invested some money and that some type of community projects, business projects, allowing people, some business space that they might otherwise not have been able to obtain in such a wonderful area in our city. I don't know, it's just, demolishing, contributing buildings is a very serious thing, and I hope that moving forward, the staff understands that, we should try to squeeze as much as we can out of these properties, how they are, and what they might become later on.
May I weigh in on this?
Yeah.
So initially, when we purchased these properties in 2018, it's not as though we've sat on these properties for the last 4 years. We immediately undertook efforts. We immediately undertook efforts to make this property productive. And that was within the parameters of what the development thoughts in the city were at that time. The CRA is not in the business of being a landlord, unless I'm mistaken in our mission. And so when we acquired these properties, they were not acquired with a long-term vision of having people continue to live in them. Further, at the time that we purchased these, I think the call went out for anybody who wanted to come and claim these buildings and take them away, and there were no takers. That's correct, right? I'm not misremembering my history here. So I think, we put together a development plan. The community didn't like it. We didn't proceed with it. But all of that took time. It's not like I said, that we just purchased these and they've sat there just falling apart with us not doing anything over here on the side.
I would like to make a comment. I'd like to remind all of us that our job is to use tax money efficiently. It's not efficient to pour money into structures that were already deemed by our building official to be condemned and previously by our own historic board to not be viable. They were made available by advertisement and no one took them. So to contemplate that we as a CRA should now pour money into these structures is not efficient and it's not good steward of taxpayer dollars. Any other comments?
I just have a question. In reading through the documents to just wanted to figure out like the timeline. It says currently the CRA is sponsoring a citizen-led planning study to help determine what type of project the community will accept, while also analyzing the financial feasibility of a new development in downtown Lake Worth Beach. So I'm just wondering, what's the timeline for that? And like, do we demolish, then get the results, or it just seems ipso facto that we should do it that way? Like, shouldn't we know what the community, the citizen-led planning study determines before we just say, let's take them out and then say, oops, well, we could have done something different? Just seems to me we should have a solution before, or some ideas before we just demolish them and say, okay, now they're clean, they're sodded, they're beautiful. So I just like to put that out.
John?
Yeah, so the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council plan will probably be presented either in December or January, and the city is actually, William Waters is actually the project manager for that. We're not. And that was on purpose. And they have been they've been in constant communication, and Dana Little, who is doing the plan, most of it, has been notified by William Waters, and we've had several meetings of what the city's intention for those particular properties were. So all the information that was shared, whether it was May or October when the city decided to condemn these properties, was shared with them. So they most likely are going to keep the properties that the city told them to keep and not keep the properties the city told them not to keep. I don't know that for sure, but that's my understanding.
My understanding too, if I could just go on for a second, is that there are 2 properties that the city would keep. Is that correct?
Yes,
Like
they would be.
2 were deemed
No,
appropriate
there's
for-
3. There's 17 South M,
Okay,
and then there's 24 South L, and then there's
26 South L.
Thank
Right.
you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yep.
The estimates that were presented to restore these buildings, and they already own them, we already own the properties, were not that much different from the Community Land Trust estimates for building new houses. So I think we should really look at adopting a program to restore the houses. It's not $500,000 per house. It's $100,000, $200,000, or $300,000. CRA could fund that. And those were identical to the houses that are there now. That, you know, I think the Community Land Trust houses were quite attractive. They fit into the Lake Worth Historic District kind of look, and I think we should restore them.
Excuse me.
Yeah, Carla.
And I do think they were, you know, this whole demolition by neglect is really deplorable. And I understand how we got here. I'm not pointing fingers. I'm just saying it's been unfortunate all the way from the get-go. There wasn't a good plan in place. And the one thing that was missing from the beginning was community input. I think if the community was really invited in from the start to say, you know, our notion is that we're going into the historic district and we're going to buy properties and we're going to demolish them, that is what is upsetting everyone. They don't want their character, and I think anyone who's at that charrette would also, that was conducted, was very popular. Everybody wanted to keep the houses. So do we know better, you know, than the community? That's my question.
First, I don't think everybody wanted to keep the houses. Secondly, I think some of the frustration should be directed at the prior owner of these structures that didn't keep them up, because as our attorney said, the structures were not maintained and not in good condition when we received them.
Well, you could say that about many houses in Lake Worth. I think that's disingenuous.
I think what's happened is we are getting into whether what our opinion is as to what the city should be doing going forward, and I certainly respect that. But this is one of the houses. These houses look like this. This is not a house that you're going to be able to fix up and someone's going to say, yes, I want to live there. If they did, they would have taken them when they were free. It's not that we did not offer them to people. We said, you want them, come get them. And people didn't come. Then, when they said they were gonna move them to Bryant Park was up in arms to say, no, you will not. And we were trying to find, not the CRA, the city was trying to find a better use for them. And they were gonna use it as a public project on Bryant Park to say, we're gonna use this. Bryant Park says, not in our neighborhood. So I don't think that it's not that we didn't do due diligence to try and find the best use of the property, but where we are now is what we have to be forced with. There were a lot of mistakes made with this property. I'm the first to say that. But you can't go back and rewrite the history. All you can do is move forward with what you have before you. And what is before us now is to say, these properties have been condemned. The city has directed us to remove the asbestos and demolish them. That is our decision. And yes, we do need to come up with an idea of what we can do better in the future, and I'm all for that. And I think that we can devote a whole meeting to that. But right now, we have to say, what are we going to do? And when the Treasure Coast Council, when they come and they make presentations, that is the public's comment. That's the public's referendum of what we should do with these properties going forward. Okay. We can't leave them the way they are now, because it's bad for the people that live around them, and it's bad for the city.
I'd like to make a motion.
There's a motion on the table, and we've had discussion. I'm gonna go to the audience, the community, and then we'll come back to the board. Name and address for the record, please.
Cliff Kohlmeyer, 503 First Avenue South. And I've just got, first of all, one thing to correct the record. The HRPB's decision was not based on the condition of the properties, but rather a redevelopment plan, which was a 5-story. It ended up being a very large monolith that no one would have agreed to in the public. The condition of the properties at 30 and 32 is in a report that the staff filed in 2019 saying that they were economically viable, historically relevant, and in good condition. Those were in good condition. It's water under the bridge, I know, but I just had to correct the record on that. What we can do, Ms. Bloxham, at this point to stop it happening again is please tent the remaining buildings at 24 and 26 South End, because any further neglect on the part of the CRA or the city, whoever wants to point fingers, is intentional neglect, intentional demolition, because the need for termite tenting was recognized a long time ago. And if you want to keep those, and I certainly do, because I live across the street, do that, please. In October, on the 6th of October, the commission had a meeting where this was brought up, and William Waters said, yeah, I'll look into it. We don't really have funding for it, but we'll look into it. And here we are a month later, no tenting. That needs to happen, for goodness sake. The other thing I would suggest is please follow through with the Treasure Coast Planning, Regional Planning Council's charrette, which has yet to conclude. And our process in May included the possible restoration of those buildings at particularly 30 and 32 South M Street, which I'm very familiar with. It's not as if they cannot be restored, it's just a question of cost. And because they can be restored, and because I think the CRA should be a good custodian, a good steward of those buildings, it's incumbent on the CRA to restore them if at all possible. I know there may be grants. Is my time up? There may be grants for this, like there is a grant, I believe, for the demolition. But if we look for restoration grants, I am sure that there's money out there that would help us if we don't have the immediate funds to do that, to restore those buildings. Because they're an integral part of the old town historic district. And that's all I have to say. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you. Any other comments, Commissioner?
Okay, thank you. First, I want to say I'm sorry. I was one of the people who was very upset about the renderings that went out years ago. And I say years ago because it's been years ago. And then we had COVID, right? The stupid C word. So I'm sorry that there are certain people in the city who are taking the brunt of decisions that were made by a previous commission and a previous city manager who couldn't get out of the city fast enough when the commission was replaced. So with that being said, I need you to all know that the direction that the CRA went came from City Hall. When City Hall gives funds and says, go do this, it's our city, they're gonna take that direction, and they did what they were told to do. So let's put that way over there on the shelf, right? Now here we are, fast forward. God bless you.
Thank you.
We did apply for a grant for the demolition, Mr. Kohlmeyer, and we didn't get it. It was through the SWA. They said, nope, you're not getting any money from us, do your own demolition. So we did try that. That was just a month ago. I had the not so pleasure of walking through those properties in the high heat of South Florida with horrible, horrible foul smells. I believe that almost all the city commission toured them independently with staff. And being born and raised in Detroit, I respect and I love historical buildings. That's why I fought to restore the Gulf Stream. As soon as I toured the two buildings that we are saving, I said, if I had the money, I'd pick these buildings up and I'd move them because they're just beautiful. The hardwood, the architecture, you can't recreate that. You can try, but it's not the same. So I'm very excited. I stated this on the dais that we are saving those two structures. We cannot throw, as a city, money into these other structures. $100,000 or whatever the fee is to do this demolition is a gift, first of all. I can't believe it came in that low, especially right now, with costs the way they are. And also, we haven't factored in the cost of the maintenance of these properties. I get the pleasure of walking by them every Sunday to and from church. And at Church by the Glades, they call probably 5 times a week, PBSO, for the people who have taken up camp, who have re-broke the boards multiple times. And we have ordinances that say you can't put a fence around properties to secure them, so we kind of shot ourselves in the foot. So the CRA, in my opinion, has done everything they could with their hands being tied. I also inquired on where we are with the Treasure Coast planning. I have been notified today via email. It is on for December. We will get an update from Dana as a commission, as a city, and we had great charrettes and we had great input. And I do believe that most of those designs that are gonna come forward are going to include the demolition of those properties because we need workforce housing. We need affordable housing. We need new housing stock. Not everybody wants to live in an old house. Not everybody can afford to live in an old house, especially when you have a historical preservation board that is protective as ours is, and there's a cost associated with that. So I urge you to approve this, and let's move this needle forward, and let's get this project done.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? Yes, sir. Name and address for the record, please. Oh, I didn't catch it. David, where were you?
So my name is Tom Ostro, and I live at 2111 Notre Dame Drive. I had a chance to take a look at this, and I looked at the bid that Bella Construction Company had for rehabbing some of these homes, and I'll just give you a feel for that. They have, 710, they said demolish. There's nothing that can be done with that. 704, $317,000. 25 South K Street, $266,000. 30 South L Street, $338,000. 32 South L Street, $348,000. 26 South L Street, $367,000. I fully support the demolition of these buildings because it makes perfect sense to do that. Second of all, I would say that I draw the opposite conclusion of Ms. Fairfax in that I was struck also by the fact that the Treasure Coast built this beautiful home that a low-income person can get into for $257,000. The bottom line is we have over 1,000 homes that are historic in this community, okay? We got a lot of them, and that's wonderful. The fact is, if we could have a bigger home, a newer home, a brand new home to put a family into, that is much more better than taking something that is already obsolete and then trying to restore it. It makes absolutely no sense to me not to demolish those homes. and we have, if I understand, we have a grant for that. And also with respect to comments from citizens, I've talked to a number of people that actually feel the opposite way than Ms. Kerner's comments are, and they actually totally support the demolition of these homes. And these comments, many of them have been sent in, so I hope you take the time to read them. I did read them, and I'm gonna give you a little flavor of them. The building next to me, a person lives next to one of these buildings, is in such bad condition I could put my arm through the exterior wall into the rooms. The termite and rot damage is so bad that the walls are collapsing, and you can rock this building by pushing it with one hand. Another one says that she's embarrassed when friends come to Lake Worth and they have to drive by these homes, and they ask her, why are these derelict homes there? I mean, I've seen them for 4 years. And the answer is, well, that's Lake Worth. That's the comment, so that's not my comment. That's a comment that was given, and you can read those yourself. I will tell you that if this was a private owner, the city would never tolerate the condition of these homes. The city would come to that homeowner and say, either tear it down or you're gonna have to fix it up. And any homeowner would tear it down. Only the government that wants to spend taxpayers' money is going to say, you know what, it's gonna cost $350,000, go ahead and spend it. That's not a good use of my tax money.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
Anna Maria Windish Hunt, 404 South C Street. And you're talking about dead houses, and I'm talking about people that live in them in this quadrant. And how you allow this is beyond me. When I moved here because of the CRA. To me, at that time, the CRA was equivalent to debris, trash, you want to fix it up, that's what they're there for. Except I haven't seen any of that happening in this quadrant. I have neighbors, 4 in a family. I have no idea how many more, but I recognize different people coming out of that house. There aren't even 2 bedrooms there. They have a rat problem. The owner tells them to fix it. It's their problem. So you're talking about houses. I agree with you. Get rid of them. But do something on this side of the road too. Many years ago, you could have picked up any one of these houses for nothing. You missed the boat. And at that time, when I moved here, I already knew about, what's it called? Community Land Trust, because I visited the one down in Key West. I was helping them to get that in Coconut Grove. It's nothing new. How did you miss this here? It was the CRA. And the one thing I really do resent, when John Paxman was here, he asked why we weren't at City Hall. The first attended CRA meeting I ever attended, when you were fighting about Lula or L-Dub naming it, was in City Hall, and you told him you were never there. And I just have a problem with little lies.
Please stay on
I'm
this
on topic because I want to believe you guys care about us in this area. We live here. I made an investment.
That's not topic. Please stay on topic. We're
okay.
Very
it's
specific.
about people and how we have to live. You accommodated F Street, so when Ben Zeiton, hello, don't use your GPS, come down F Street. Well,
I'm sorry, you have to talk about this particular item.
okay, I
No.
tell you what.
You can make a comment. You should have made a comment on this under another item.
I was late, and
the
I'm so
non-agenda.
sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, we
Never
will.
mind.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Good evening, Board.
Name and address for the record.
My name is Tom Convoy, and I'm the business owner at 30 South M Street. I'd like to read to you guys your charge in the City of Lake Worth Community Redevelopment Plan that created you on historic buildings. I'd like to read to you the historic buildings charge that you have in your redevelopment plan that created you character and charm of the historic downtown are significant assets and should be preserved and enhanced through policies and programs set forth by the City Commission. Restoration of historic structures and the formulation of architectural guidelines for new construction and building renovations are fundamental aspects of the Lake Worth redevelopment program. That is the charge that you guys were set forth with. And we had a great charrette. It was probably one of the most powerful community building things I've experienced here in Lake Worth. We still haven't seen the final call from that, and we're gonna tear down these buildings before we even see what that says. I was responsible for the appeal to the commission, which unanimously shut it down, and to the circuit judge. The circuit judge made he dismissed it without prejudice. That was not a decision. He just merely dismissed it without prejudice. That meant he didn't feel like he was going to make a decision on it, period. That didn't say yes, it didn't say no. We should keep these houses intact until we've completed the charrette process. I think that the public should be allowed to look at these houses because I have heard what you've said. I've heard it from other commissioners, but I haven't seen it. If I saw it, I might be able to agree with you, but I haven't seen it. And I feel like we should be able to see it before we destroy these houses. Protect the historic character of our community, please.
Yes.
Peggy Fisher. That's Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. I understand that there's a long history on this. There's another commission involved that started this whole process, another city manager, and you're at this point of whether or not to approve the demolition. The building director, building inspector for the city has declared all of these homes, these 5 homes, unsafe. So the city now knows they're unsafe. If someone goes on that property and gets hurt, who's liable? The city. I would say the city's going to get called on that. If something's dismissed with prejudice, I believe it can be brought back up so that if you weren't happy with the decision, it could have been refiled. But the decision is what to do solely with these 5 homes. You've been told they're unsafe. The building inspector has said they should be demolished. As Ms. Blockson said, they were all offered, publicly advertised. If you want it, you can have it. You just have to pay for moving it. And none of them were taken. None of them by anybody. Not just in Lake Worth, anybody. So you gotta make a decision not on what happened in the past, but what's sitting before you. And I think the only decision that can be made is to demolish them and move forward with what the city and you as a CRA jointly decide to do with that vast accumulation of land. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor?
Good evening, Betty Resch. I live at 207 South L Street. My office is at L Street and Lake Avenue. This is as personal as it gets in my lifetime. My dissatisfaction and unhappiness with how this went is no secret. After I was, and it was one of the platforms that I ran on because I was so unhappy about the way, especially the fact that they had evicted everyone. Because I am the person I am, I was very open with that. I've discussed it with Joan. We've come to an agreement. Maybe not the best thing that they did. Here we are today. Whether or not, I think, I'm a practical person. Whether or not it was done correctly, or this should have happened, or the city shouldn't have bought it, or CRA should have bought it, I still think they never should have evicted everybody. I think that was a terrible thing to do, but I'm a realist, and here we are today. We have the charrette coming back, I think in December. It's coming back to the City Commission or to you guys? Commission, okay. So that's all gonna be open, and there have been, I mean, I think a lot of people that are in this room participated in that charrette. It was amazing. There were a lot of people here. And there are some beautiful designs. Ms. Fairfax, you made a beautiful design for that property.
Incorporating the houses.
Yep, but we never found out if it was feasible financially. But here we are now. I think that it's important that we do tent the 2 buildings that we're keeping. I think let's get on with that. I don't love what happened. You know, my statement at the time was, you know, the CRA essentially has created blight, and you did. Not you, but you know, the CRA and the City Commission together created blight in my neighborhood because people lived there. People came and went. But we can't rewrite history. We can't go back. So I would like to see, you know, when the Treasure Coast comes back, see what they've come up with. Let's make this turn, you know, this lemon into lemonade. Let's look at what we've got. Let's see what will serve the city best. I hope that they come back with a viable financial alternative, which includes some affordable, some, you know, a mix of different things. No one's more invested. I mean, every night I sleep on L Street. So there's really nobody else more invested in this than I am. And again, I was very unhappy with the way things went, not just the CRA, but the former commission. But here we are. Let's go forward and make the best of it as we can. And you know, Daniel, I think you're right. You know, in the future, I don't think that kind of thing's going to happen again after the lesson that was learned by everybody and the 4 of us sitting up on the dais right now. Won't go in that direction. But I'm saying that generally. I've never spoken to anybody about it. So let's learn from the past and go forward with the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, can I ask a question to Betty?
We're still in public comment.
Okay.
We'll circle back.
I just wanted to get a clarification.
Yeah, we have to, because there's
Brendan,
gonna
I
be.
got 3 more comments,
Thank you.
okay?
Yeah,
I'll read
thanks,
them on
Chris.
the record. Okay. This is from Amy Farrader, 30 South J Street. I'm submitting this comment related to the demolition of unsafe structures in the L&M area. Can you please share this with the CRA board? As a neighboring property owner, I fully support the demolition of the following properties: 710 First Avenue South, 704 First Avenue South, 25 South K Street, 30 South L Street, 32 South L Street, and 509 Lake Avenue. While we anxiously await the findings of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council for a future vision of this area, the city has the responsibility to maintain a level of public safety and sanitation. These structures are unsafe and have become a hub for illicit activities, including illegal dumping and drug use. We have also noted an increase in rat activity around these properties and have had to hire extermination services to protect our properties and residents from this infestation. The commission has reached consensus to allow for the demolition of these structures. In May and October 2022, the commission was presented with inspection reports and declaration of unsafe building condition notices from building officials. Please follow through with this work and make this area safer for residents. That's from Amy. Next one is from Aaron Allen, 208 South Lakeside Drive. I will not be in attendance tonight, so I'm submitting my comments via email to be read this evening. I am relieved to see the final disposition of the derelict structures on L&M Street on the agenda this evening. I know the city looked into the feasibility of trying to save these structures and rehabbing them, and it was determined that financially it does not make sense. The money that it would take to rehab them would be better used towards the construction of a new city hall that Mayor Resch is dreaming of for the city. The city is in a constant state of not having enough money to fund projects. It's been that way the entire 38 years I've lived here. My understanding is that the CRA has a grant that would be used to demolish the structures. Please don't kick the can down the road and face the possibility of losing this funding to facilitate this. It is always an emotional decision to demolish historic structures. However, these buildings have been allowed to slowly degrade into a state of being uninhabitable. The city's building official has determined them to be unsafe and recommends demolition. I have a feeling that if these structures were owned by ordinary residents of the city, that they would have been condemned and demolished long ago. The buildings are a true public safety issue and are breeding grounds for unsanitary conditions such as rat infestation and vagrants taking them over and living in them despite not having plumbing or electricity. This is already a problem citywide. Vagrants going on abandoned properties or properties where there are part-time owners and using the grounds to sleep and defecate and engage in illicit activities. As one of the city's biggest cheerleaders and a local realtor who sells more than 40 homes a year in Lake Worth Beach, it's hard to explain to prospective homeowners how this is allowed. Our city is blessed with an abundance of these historic cottages. This would be a more difficult decision if that were not the case. There are approximately 1,000 structures in Lake Worth Beach that meet the definition of cottages. Let's focus on the ones that can be saved and brought into line with today's living standards and preserve them for the future. We can highlight these little gems for home ownership, and they can be something we can be proud of instead of embarrassed about. The CRA's core purpose is to eliminate slum and blight. The demolition of these provides an opportunity to help revitalize our downtown core, which is sorely needed. That's from Aaron. Final is from Deborah Robert, 127 South K Street. Dear CRA Director, Chairman, and Board, my name is Deborah Robert. I am a contributing historic cottage owner at 127 South K and a neighbor who knew some of the tenants who lived in some of these dwellings. It saddens me that the demolition of these structures is on this agenda. However, from dealing with the repercussions of their blight day and night for years, it's a relief to know they may finally be properly taken down. We and most of our neighbors take pride in living in a historic home and neighborhood. We respect the integrity and guidelines of our historic district. At the same time, we're embarrassed that we and all visitors must pass by these dangerous and derelict structures to get to downtown. We hear comments like, "Why does your city allow this? I can't believe it is still so disgusting. It's Lake Worth, what do you expect?" There comes a point of diminishing return. In this case, we are far past that point. In the past, I've communicated and met with Peter Ringel, concerned about the health and safety of tenants next door to me. 129 South K, the details are all public record. Over the course of 2 years, this experience convinced me that Mr. Ringel would not sign on the dotted line for a structure's demolition unless and until it is an absolute last and only resort. He did sign on a number of structures on the agenda today, and consultants have indicated the same findings. To that end, I ask that the CRA board make the hard decision and allow for removal of these far-gone structures. With your guidance, we can honor the space and build structures that are aesthetically appropriate and can benefit our tax base while housing numerous people and perhaps small businesses. Thank you for your service to the CRA and city. That's Deborah Robert.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
Commissioner League, again, for the record, I want to correct something I said earlier. The SWA grant that we did not receive was for a demolition project at the cemeteries, was not for the properties.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes. We're actually gonna go, so just quickly, we're gonna come back to the board. Since everybody has kind of had their say, we're gonna one more time per person, and then we'll see if we can call the question.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I can ask a question now? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to make sure I understand what went to the commission in May and October. Is it the exact same thing we're voting on now, or it's something different? Just to make sure.
My understanding is what went to the commission was the,
Please use the,
estimates.
Joan, sorry, use the mic to.
Sorry, I have to share it. What went to the commission was the estimates for rehabbing them, as well as the letters from Peter Ringel saying that these were, I don't want to say beyond repair, because anything can be repaired, but that they were dangerous, and that we should move forward with the demo of all this. And I've checked all this with William Waters, except for the ones that we mentioned before, which is the 3. So, yes.
So I guess my question is, what was the commission vote? I understand what went to them now. What were they voting on at that meeting, and was it unanimous?
We did not, I don't believe we took a vote. We
Okay.
gave direction to staff that we agreed with the reports and the findings. Some of us begrudgingly, because again, we didn't want to see them, but the facts were the facts. I do not believe an official vote was taken. I think it was just direction from staff to proceed.
Got it.
We did
Okay.
not vote.
It's a consensus.
I'm trying to remember, amazing long time.
Kim Stokes, City Commissioner. My recollection is the same. These were not the only properties that came to us, it was all of them, and we did mention back then that we were interested in saving the 2 or 3 of them, and at that time we had asked and also given direction to make sure that we tent them and take care of them properly. And I think this might be another one of those situations where we don't understand like, as far as I'm concerned, the city that bought the city-owned properties were handed over to the CRA. We haven't been, we have no oversight over them. We're not doing that. So my impression at that time was that the CRA would take on the tenting and, of those other properties. So we were begrudgingly in alignment that we couldn't justify the cost to get the rest of those units up to where they needed to be. But we also wanted to make sure that the other ones were preserved. And I'm a little sad that both of those are not happening at the same time.
Any other comments?
Is that
questions?
something we can add to our motion or to the next agenda to do?
I would support that if we could direct.
So the question is,
wanna do
the tenting was in there. I read it in the
Yes, it is
backup.
It's in there?
Yeah, it's
Mhm,
specific.
it's there.
I don't know if it was part of the
The
same
cost.
company. It's a different company, but it is in the backup. Yeah.
Yeah, we're working with the city to.
Yeah.
Hire.
So the motion, the staff recommendation would include tenting the two buildings that we plan to preserve. Three,
right?
is it
Yes.
three? Three buildings.
Yeah, I don't think 17 South End needs to be tented, but.
Oh,
Oh, that, okay, so it is two.
So
Okay.
if we vote to approve this item tonight, it will include the tinting of the two.
That's what I read in the backup. The two buildings will be tented. Yes,
Okay.
David.
So what I would ask is if that's part of the motion, just for the record, that it be clear that the motion includes direction to tent those two structures located at
24 South L.
Will the
and
motioner
26
agree to
South L.
amend?
I would. I am not getting off the hook here with my motions.
I know. Seconder agrees to the amendment?
What do you, Commissioner Clark?
I agree to the amendment, however, it could not be tied together because this is an issue that staff is already working on. And this is
Okay.
a job that they've already been tasked with. And so I don't want my motion to be amended to say you cannot proceed with the demolition and asbestos removal without doing the tinting. Those are two separate issues, and if we could make a separate motion to do the tinting, that's fine. I just don't want it to be tied to what we've
Are we-
already committed.
Are we able to do that?
Shall,
Well, I would go back to the maker of the motion, just if you.
again?
I mean, I could. Clear on the record that the motion is to approve the contract for the demolition as separate and apart from the direction to tenting the two structures.
Yes, I'm not sure to make that conjunctive or disjunctive. So my motion is for the demolition and any necessary signatures, utilizing Lotus Construction of South Florida, not concomitantly, what's my adverb here? While over here, staff is going to tent and otherwise maintain 24 and 26 South L.
And I can second that motion.
Okay, so now we have a motion and a second.
Are we going down?
Yeah, is there
Every
any
person?
other, yeah,
Go ahead.
anybody, yeah?
I just had a point of what I wanted to say was I wanted to clarify with Mayor Resch. Hi, Betty. When you said that, when you made your comments, were you basically saying too that you thought it would be prudent to wait until the results of the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, or no? Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? up
Can
here?
I just clear up? I don't know why, this is November, I don't know why we can't wait another month. These houses have been neglected for years now, and suddenly we're rushing to tear them down. I think we could wait until Dana Little comes up with his recommendation and makes a presentation. What, is it a month from now? Is it 3 weeks from now? I just think we should delay it, and we can meet again, and we spent a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of community effort to consider whether we should keep these houses or not. And we have one little bit of information, which is estimates for restoring these houses, and suddenly everybody wants to tear them down. I honestly think that we should delay I think it would be prudent to delay our decision to demolish.
The motion before us is to make a vote on what has been presented. But when we talk about delay, we don't know what the Treasure Coast is going to come forward with. And for the people who live next door to these structures, and they have been enduring this fiasco for a number of years, I don't want them to wait another day. And if we said, we had 3 other properties that we're going to work with. And it is our every intention to restore them, and these are not restorable, if that's a proper word. They're not. If they were, we would have done it. You know, we would have made that motion before. I think we should move forward with the vote that we have at hand, and I call for the vote.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion as stated, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Please reflect.
The motion passes 5-2.
Correct. Okay, on to action agenda item B. We have the purchase of privately owned property on North G Street for affordable housing. That's you? Please.
I'm so sorry. I feel so rude. So as the board knows, we're continuing to look for properties, specifically in the neighborhood of Tropical Ridge and Royal Point Sienna, to buy. Just as a reminder, when we bought the properties back with NSP2 money, we had to buy foreclosed and short sale properties. That was our goal, and it was required by the federal government. However, since that time, I can tell you that I've checked on a regular basis, there are no foreclosed or short sale homes in the entire city. So when a property comes available to us, we usually jump right on it and try to purchase it. And in this case, it is a property on G Street. There is nothing there right now. It is a vacant piece of land. The estimate for the property was $95,000. We offered less than that. About $88,000 was what the owner accepted from us. We would like to purchase this property and then turn it over to one of our affordable housing developers, whether that be Adopt a Family, Habitat for Humanity, or the Community Land Trust. That's a decision that the board can make at a later date. But at this time, we're asking that the board authorize the purchase of 302 North G Street for affordable housing.
Thanks, Joan. I'll look for a motion on this item.
I hate to even open my mouth here, but I'm going to move to approve the purchase of 302 North G Street and utilize funding from the capital funds budget, concomitantly any necessary signatures.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, great. We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion from the board on this agenda item?
I'd like to say that this is a phenomenal price for this.
Yeah.
I have clients who have picked up vacant, not many, but vacant pieces of property in town, and I have not seen $88,000 for a piece of raw land. So, good find.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a good, just a comment on that, we have a good team that supports us for the new members of the board. We have a local realtor, with, extensive experience in the area, and they really do a good job for us, I think.
Who is that?
Anderson Carr.
Anderson Clark.
They're
What's
down
their
in-
company?
And Carr.
Anderson,
and Carr.
downtown West Palm. I wanna say it's at least I think a 50-year-old company.
I think more than that.
Yeah. Any other comments on this item?
Yes, I have a question. Who owns 304? Do you know who owns 304? The lot right next to it. It's also a vacant lot.
Yes, and I don't remember the name of the person who owned it, but I asked Anderson and Carr to call that person and also call the person to the east to see if we could get any of those, and none of those are available at this moment.
I'm just concerned of the size of this lot and the projects that could come from it. I'm looking at it.
The only thing it's gonna take is a single family house, that's it.
Yeah, a single family home. I don't know, I have a strong belief in that, to address the housing issues that the community is facing, we need to focus more on obtaining, properties, plots where multifamily homes can be built. So I'm concerned about the size of the lot. You telling me a single family home was the only thing that could come through it. I don't know if how long have we been negotiating, or how long ago was it that we inquired about 304?
Probably a matter of weeks. Houses, and vacant properties especially, are going extremely quick. That's why we signed for this one right away to try and bring it to you at this meeting. Just going back to what you were saying about multifamily, we are also talking about a multifamily project tonight, but it was my understanding, and please, correct me if I'm wrong or put me in a different process of thinking here. My thought was that we were going to continue to do single-family homes, for sale homes, because we wanted people to buy homes, as well as do multifamily rental. So that's why I moved forward when I saw this particular lot for sale.
No, absolutely, and I don't doubt that there's other commissioners on the board that feel the same way. Because of the restraints that we have in speaking to one another outside of this forum, I would like to communicate that to staff and to my colleagues, that I believe that with the finite amount of land available in our city and with the funds that we have access to, I think we should really prioritize multifamily. And I don't know, I would like to see how other commissioners feel about maybe tabling this unless, Joan, you really think that there's no obtaining 304? You don't think that's gonna be able to happen?
I think it's something we can work on.
Can I just make an observation that we're moving forward, or we're making a motion here to purchase this. It doesn't mean that we have to immediately make it available to a partner for affordable housing. We could give advice to Anderson and Carr that we still are. The challenge is I've done this a long time, and the challenge is that we're subject to the same market that everybody else is, and even actually a little bit more challenging is the minute they find out that it's the CRA, then all the prices around and the negotiation gets even more difficult. So I think that we have a very good deal on the table, and I would be concerned that if we table it or delay it all, that deal may be lost. So while I agree with what you're saying, it is nice to aggregate property, and typically we have done that when possible. I still think we jump on this opportunity.
I just want to respond to that a bit too. I think having a mix is, especially in this community, is important, because that's what we're all about, single-family housing for home ownership. But I also think multifamily is good. It just depends on where it is. I'm not exactly sure where this G Street property is, or what the zoning is, or even if we did acquire the property next door, if we could fit into the neighborhood with multifamily. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, any other comments before we go to public?
It's okay.
Okay,
Zero.
Commissioner.
I'm like hanging out with you guys tonight. Commissioner Maliga again for the record. First, I want to say thank you. This is a great price for this lot. And I hear your concerns, Daniel, but breaking generational wealth gaps is imperative for first-time homeowners and home ownership for single-family homes. People aren't going to come in and buy multifamily homes and put their families in those other units. We cannot turn around and turn this into a profit-making center for individuals. This really does need to focus on creating generational wealth, putting vacant lots on the tax roll. But also, we had a workshop last night at the City Commission, and our direction to staff was vacant lots, foreclosed homes, find them. Because we want to push forward as a city on making sure that if anybody can be at the table on those vacant lots, it's us, and us developing them, and us turning those into new affordable homes and workforce type houses. So I urge you guys to all support this purchase. The price is great. And like Brendan said, we don't have to move forward with, you guys can keep trying to negotiate the other two lots next to it, and see if you can get multi-units put on there, or micro units as a 3. But right now, we need to focus on affordable home ownership, single-family homes, and just getting new housing stock. And at $88,000, that's a great price.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public on this particular item?
Yeah, check D Street.
I'm sorry.
Quite a few empty lots.
Okay.
400 block.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Okay, back to the board. All those in favor, please state so by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. On to item C, approval of local government commitment for development of affordable housing at 821 South Dixie. Mike Oliver. Thank you.
Thanks for hanging in.
Sleep mode.
That hour's not gonna go out.
Brendan, if I may, can I just give a little background for
Yeah,
this?
thanks, Joan.
While Mike is setting up. So Mike Oliver's from New South Residential, and we connected maybe a month or 2 or 3 ago, and he is interested in buying a number of lots down at 821 South Dixie. It was an area that has actually, the city's actually was very interested in the same lots quite a while ago. But when we found out that an affordable housing developer was interested in it, the city and the CRA kind of backed off and said, you know, let them do something. So his interest and his goal is to do a low-income housing tax credit project for 55 and older specifically. There's a lot of hurdles that he has to go through, including actually buying the property, getting the low-income housing tax credits, and then getting the rest of the funding to do this. At this time, however, in order to apply for the low-income housing tax credits, he needs a local match. And that local match could potentially come from the CRA, and that is in the amount of $647,000. It's not a match that we would give right now, it's just a match that we would say that we would give to them if they get the 9% low-income housing tax credits. So I'll give it over to you, Michael.
You know, it's funny, can everybody hear me? Can I raise this somehow?
You can pick it up.
So,
There you go.
I've been doing this for 20 or 30 years, and what I mean by that is traveling an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours from my home, my community in near Orlando, and sitting through honest debate, whether it's at a planning and zoning board, city commission, county commission, trying to get a rezoning or whatever it is. I think it's great, the process. I mean, I don't have really any interest in what you just talked about for an hour, but what I see is the process being, you know, honest debate between passionate people on opposite sides of an issue, and I think it's the first time it's ever happened. I've never been to a meeting on election night. I don't think it's ever happened in 30 years, and I'll just say that I only wish our state and federal government could do it as well as you guys did it tonight. And I'm serious about that. So good job.
You'll be in the recording.
And you know, sometimes I sit through several of these things, so you don't have to apologize. It takes 3 hours sometimes to get to me. So yeah, I'm here representing New South Residential and American Residential Communities, and we do develop affordable housing. I think it's important, and many of you might understand. You know, I think it was the lady from the Land Trust earlier tonight, and she talked about affordable housing, and she said attainable housing, and she said workforce housing. And it's funny, if you look at the supplementary sheet I gave you, I just want to go through this real quick, because I think it's really important for you guys to understand exactly what I'm talking about, and some of you maybe all of you do, I don't know. But it's what is affordable housing, and obviously the first, I mean, it's, you know, obviously, you know, what somebody can afford to pay. Well, how much money do you make, you know? Loosely speaking, they define it as, you know, up to 30% of your gross income. Well, do you make $1 million a year? Do you make $100,000 a year? There's a big gap there. Workforce housing, roughly speaking, 80 to 120% of AMI, area median income. Attainable housing, that's kind of a newer one. I think I started hearing that term maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It's basically equivalent to workforce housing. So let me get right down to what we do and how we get our projects financed. And it's based on Palm Beach County having an AMI of $90,300. And so if you just apply this simple math and look at the table, you'll see what that means. I mean, you know, and the reason I put 28% here is because 10% of our units have to be, you know, affordable to people making less than 28% of AMI. 10% have to be that. The other 90% have to be people earning no more than 60% of AMI. And then you can see the 80 and the 20 kind of apply to this workforce definition. And then you can see, as you come across, kind of what that means in terms of 30% of income. So what we do is affordable housing as defined by the federal government and regulated by the IRS and HUD. We don't set our rent rates, and HUD does that. So the way this process works, basically, is that the IRS provides tax credits, federal income tax credits, and HUD determines the rent rates. The CRA, not the Community Redevelopment Agency or the Community Redevelopment Area, but the Community Reinvestment Act of 1977 requires banking regulators to encourage financial institutions to help meet the credit needs of communities like Lake Worth, for example. And you can only imagine if the bankers could do whatever they wanted to do, let's just say, for example, right? And they can lend money to the new condos on the beach or the new malls or shopping centers and all this other stuff. They probably wouldn't look at, you know, certainly inner cities maybe, or, you know, dilapidated parts of many towns in the state of Florida. And so they did this to encourage the big banks to invest in these areas. And in fact, and I don't know exactly how this works, I could talk to our partners at Wells Fargo, you know, it's complicated, but every year, the big banks, they have an obligation to meet a certain number of credits, and this is how they do it. So the government issues tax credits to the agencies, like in Florida, it's the Florida Housing and Finance Corporation, specifically for the purpose of building low-income housing. Hence the term low-income housing tax credits, or LIHTC. If you've ever heard that term or seen that, you know, the LIHTC symbol, that's what that means. It's low-income housing tax credits. Our partner is Wells Fargo. They provide us the construction loan that bridges the gap between the time we get an allocation from the state. We don't get it right away. We get those dollars after the project is completed. So Wells Fargo gives us the construction loan, and then once we close on the construction loan and we start putting people in the building, they provide a permanent loan for us as well. They're our equity partner. They use the tax credits to offset their federal tax liability. So literally, the government is saying, okay, Wells Fargo and New South Residential, here's whatever, $28 million in tax credits, and we can't use them because we don't, I mean, we'd have to make a lot of money to have that kind of a tax bill. But they have their tax bills, I don't know, $500 million, $1 billion a year, and they use those tax credits and they give it right back to the IRS at the end of the year and say, okay, this offsets that. Okay, so in 2022, in Palm Beach County, in 2022, Palm Beach County will receive approximately $28.5 million in tax credits to the successful applicant. In today's market, Wells Fargo pays only 94 cents on the dollar for those. So there's a little bit of more of a benefit for Wells Fargo, but that's just the system. There's nothing we can do about that. It's like buying gasoline. One day it's $3 and the next day it's $3.20. I just want to give you a feel for how this works. Just last year, the allocation would have only been 23.7 million. So because of the inflation in construction in the last 3 years, Florida Housing has just upped the ante like $5 million for large counties. They had to because we couldn't afford to build our projects. This is just happening for the first time right now. The RFA for this cycle is coming out in a few weeks, but that's what they told us they were going to do. So that's good news for affordable housing in general. You know, and of course that's because of the increase in building costs, labor, things of that nature, and we can't raise our rents that much. We're capped by HUD. So I know you guys know the Bohemian over here. It's a beautiful building. You know, how the way they fixed their financial gap is they just raise rent. And you know, their one bedrooms are going for between, I think, $1,600 and $2,100 a month, something like that. You guys probably know better than I do. So I just wanted to go through that and just kind of set the stage on what we're really talking about here. This literally is free money from the federal government, and we make this pitch in front of counties and cities, housing authorities, and CRAs. Last year we just did we just CO'd a building in Cape Coral October 12th, 2 weeks after the hurricane hit. We were supposed to CO it on that Friday, the last day of September, but the hurricane hit. So, you know, and that was a CRA loan. And Nita Whaley, who is the director there, she's ecstatic. The building's up. It's on the slides. You've probably seen it if you flip through your information there. But they love the building. Not everybody loves every different type of architecture. This particular product, some people like it, some people don't. But it's what we build, and you know, it's what I'm here to talk about. So now that we got that behind us, so you know that we are Florida-based. We've been doing this for over 20 years, and we have about 2,600 affordable housing units throughout Florida. Mostly seniors lately. We do family projects. We have one starting in Ocala in about 2 months. But we've been catering more to infill, high density, smaller sites, and 6- and 7-story buildings, like the ones you see right here. These two are in Kissimmee, Florida. They're about 7 years old. I think on this particular site, and it was very similar in Cape Coral, they always have a meaningful impact to the community, but you know, the building in the middle is one of our Tampa projects. In that landscape, it's not really that impactful on the landscape, right? There's all these big buildings. In a place like this, a building like this can be extremely impactful. Now, some people look at that as a negative. I look at it as a positive. When you can take a property that's, a building's been on this particular site for, I think it's like 70 or 80 years old. How many uses this thing has gone through? Right now it's a used car lot. And these buildings will be here for a long time. They're made out of, you know, they're all concrete, post-tension concrete. By the way, our building did great in the 140-mile-an-hour winds at the end of September, so we are happy about that. So this is the first one. This is considered a high-rise at Florida Housing, up to 7 stories. Built in 2014. It's 80 units, and it's in Tampa. Yeah, I'll just flip through these really quick. This one's in Clearwater. Very similar architecture. You'll notice the art that we put up on these. The art is done. We have a local artist who collaborates with us. We always try to put some kind of Florida theme, typically with some wildlife and things of that nature. We think they're great. These are actually 1/4-inch aluminum, and they print it on the aluminum, and that is probably, I don't know, like 4 by 8 pieces, you know, something like that, just to give you some scope for the size. That's in Orlando, 110 units. This is the Cape Coral. This is kind of interesting. I'll point this out to you. This is in Cape Coral. We just CO'd this building. It's 82 units, 7 stories, and it's got structured parking underneath. We had to do that because this site is only 1.04 acres. It's small. So we had to do some structured parking to get the parking count up. But we used every bit of that, that site, obviously. And if you look around, downtown Old Cape Coral it reminds me of driving up Old Dixie, or South Dixie. You know, you see a lot of 1- and 2-story structures. They're all older. Nothing wrong with that. But, I don't know. It was very impactful to the neighborhood, and I think most people think it was a very positive thing. And it's filled up. I mean, these affordable housing, I heard it a lot today. I mean, guys, it's so deep, the need for affordable housing. It's hard to comprehend. We could build 1,000 of these, and it wouldn't even come close to taking care of the needs. So these are new developments. We're breaking ground on this one in St. Cloud, which is in Osceola County. Like last week, we scraped the site, and we purchased this from the city. It was in a CDD, and the city owned the property, and it took us 4 years to get this allocation, which leads me to a very important point that I want to make. This business is about patience. There's so much competition for these tax credits every year. It used to be in medium counties that there were 160 applications and only about 10 allocations each year. Florida Housing put a cap on the number of applications we can submit to 3. So in medium county and large county, we can only submit 3 per year. Bringing it down in medium county down to 80 applications a year for those 10 grants. In large county, which Palm Beach is one of the larger counties, 6 large counties, there were 24 applications last year for about the same 10 allocations. So, and it literally comes down to a lottery ball. And I'll go over that a little bit in a little bit. But you have to be patient. The cities that want this type of project, you know, I just tell them you have to be patient. You have to go into it knowing it might take, you know, 2 or 3 cycles to get your lottery ball. But the ones that stick it out always get one. It's just the way it is. So, I'm sorry, this is the St. Cloud project. And we are starting in Ocala. We're doing our first family project in probably several years. So here, excuse me, here's the site, or the sites. I think you guys are probably familiar with it, maybe? You know where this is? Okay. So the owners have 5 parcels here. The main parcel is almost identical in size to the Cape Coral site, which was about 1.04 acres. This is a little bit larger. We would consider, you know, I think we have enough room for parking and stormwater and that type of stuff. This is a real simple rendering that we threw together. But in a meeting about a week ago, we were talking about this site, and Pat Law, who's our elder partner, he's been doing this for 30 years. He thought it would be a great idea if we could put the structure on stilts and put parking underneath, solely because of potential, you know, flooding. There was a couple feet of water in the parking garage at our building in Cape Coral. But the floors, the first residential floor is up 13 feet above that. So it would cost more money to do it, but it's, you know, we're trying to work out those details now. So again, this just kind of goes through the simple, you know, it's 9% low-income housing tax credits. This would be an elderly, age restricted to residents 55 and older. You know, we're trying to figure out how many units we can squeeze in and how many we can pay for, because the 28 million roughly that we get now would barely pay, would just cover this, based on numbers from Osceola County that we just received a few weeks ago, and we signed a contract with the contractor. You know, and that was $240 a square foot, which, that's why it surprised me to hear the price of the house here, you know, it was like $200 a square foot. So I need to look into this a little bit. It just might be a lot more expensive to build here, and I need to really check that out. And it would be a six-story building, because we're maxed out at 6 stories. So here's some basics. Now typically we do 50-50 mix of 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and 1-bedroom, 1 bath. But because of construction costs and because of just, you know, the way you know, it's a small site, we think we can only get 88 1-bedroom units, but we're gonna try to get 2-bedroom units.
Mike, can
Yeah.
I want to make sure we have time for board questions.
Yep.
Are you at a point where we can at least take some questions and maybe cover some of the, or is this the?
I'm almost finished with this.
Okay, great.
I'm very close
Okay,
to being finished.
thank you, appreciate it.
Like I said, we have to do a 50-year land use restriction for affordable housing. In reality, most of our buildings will always be affordable because they're going into trusts, and our senior partner, he just wants them to be affordable. So, but you can see, you know, 10% of the units, 28% AMI, 90%, 60% AMI. You know, a certain percentage of our units have to be adapted to people with special needs, disabling conditions, and hearing and visual impaired people. And those are all, Florida Housing requires that. You know, I think you've seen the rents. There's the rents. The one thing I didn't have on that sheet that you saw previously was that we have to provide a utility allowance. So it's actually 28% of AMI, and then minus the, you know, utility allowance. So what you see to the right are what we can actually charge. $394 for a 1-bedroom for the ELI, extremely low income, and $946 for the 1-bedroom, 1-bath, regular, 60% AMI units. And we have some basic resident services, and Florida Housing requires these types of things. You know, just things that help out elderly people. You know, they have problems getting groceries, or they have, you know, things of that nature. Light housekeeping, things like that. Development costs, this says 29.6. You know, we get about 28 million approximately in LIHTC money, and then we have a few $1 million in permanent financing. And so let me tell you real quick about the $640,000 commitment by the local government. It's required by Florida Housing for us to, and they set that number, for us to qualify for a particular funding goal. And it's called the Local Government Area of Opportunity Funding Goal. Without that, we just can't win, unless we were the only application in Palm Beach County to have it. If there's more than one, it goes to the lottery ball. So you have to have that to compete. and we probably wouldn't move forward without it. So, these are just some, to give you a feel for the interior. This is just a typical build out. You can see the kind of spec level and types of amenities that we provide. That's actually just an elevator lobby. There's a typical corridor, game room. Sometimes if we have room, we put pavilions and grills and things of that nature. Those are planting boxes, and those get used actually quite a bit. There you go. Any questions?
Perfect. Thank you. We will look for a motion and a second, and then we'll have discussion and go to public. Anyone prepared to make?
Let me say one more thing real quick.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and that is this: we are scrambling to put this together. We're here to ask for your commitment because applications are due December 28th. There's a chance we can't put this together for this year's cycle, and I just want to be upfront and honest with you guys. Obviously, if we don't submit an application, then, I mean, we only get the money when we need it, and that's at CO. We typically get the local government money at a CO, so the building's built. So in Cape Coral, for example, we just requested the money this past week. We started construction 18 months ago. So from the time they signed their form or made their commitment in 2019, it was 3 years before we asked for them to fund their commitment.
Right.
So I just want to put that out there. If we can't make this cycle, we'll be ready to do it next year. We'll have plenty of time to get the property zoned and all that type of stuff. So.
Thank you.
Okie dokie. Jen, are we looking for the dollar amount, the 640?
Yes.
Okay. So I move that we authorize funds in the form of a forgivable loan in the amount of $640,000 to the LIHTC project to be located at 821 South Dixie in support of New South Residential's 55+ affordable project.
And to authorize the
And
chair
to authorize
sign the
all necessary signatures
verification of
to sign,
contribution.
yes.
Is anyone prepared for a second of that motion?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We'll move forward with the discussion. We did a
I'm sorry, can I
project.
just clarify?
Oh, yeah.
Is a forgivable loan a grant? Is that semantics or your?
Not entirely.
Okay,
It's,
so I just was wondering like how that works, because here we're saying $640,000 loan or grant, and what I just heard you say was a forgivable? So I
No,
just wanted-
the loan is forgivable, but they have certain requirements that they have to comply with under Florida Housing Finance Corporation requirements. There's typically a use agreement, property restrictions imposed on the property that they have to comply with over the term of the loan and any of the financing that they get.
I see, okay, good.
Let me
The discussion was over, sorry for those that couldn't hear, the discussion was about the mechanics of this money, and I guess it's a loan versus a grant, and the structure is a loan, a forgivable loan, not a grant.
So Florida Housing does say it can be either a loan or a grant. We've gotten loans on every other one we've done. We are seeking a grant. It's not to say that we wouldn't be happy with a loan. A lot of our competitors are getting even larger grants from cities because of the construction cost. So I just want, I've spoken to Joan only a few times. She thought that, maybe a grant would be more appropriate. Actually, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Joan, but
Well,
from the
actually talking to our council, we thought a forgivable loan would be better, only
Okay.
just to thwart any kind of thought of flipping the property.
Gotcha.
Not that
No.
we would, but yeah.
Yeah, well, and just so you'll know, we don't close on the land until we get the allocation, so we can't flip the property. But let me do this. What I will do is because we've never done a forgivable loan, and there's, from the loans that we've done, we've actually been penalized in the last year. This is new to Florida Housing as well. So when their accountants got involved, they're like, oh no, you got your $3 million permanent loan from Wells Fargo, and we tried to use our loan as our government loan just as part of our loan. We have to meet these certain debt service coverage ratios. It's got to be between 1.15 and 1.5. And when we were not able to use the government loan, this is at the city of Tampa, just last year, we got docked housing credits. It's a formula. It's just the decision they made, the conclusion they came to, and it hurt us. But I'll look into the forgivable loan and just let you guys know.
And it'll come back to the board before that
So-
time.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I think the important part is that we would make the match for you to go ahead and get the 9% credit, and then we would come back with some kind of, if you got the credit, we would come back with some kind of agreement, and then we can work all those things out.
Okay,
It
that's
seems,
fine.
it seems to me that there's a time clock on this, so, you know.
Oh, yeah.
We
No,
need
there is.
to.
It's tough.
So
It
the semantics of this and, you know, from obviously taking David's advice, and we can figure out the proper way to make sure that, of course, we want you to be eligible if we're
No,
gonna
I don't
move forward with
disagree.
this,
I don't,
so.
I agree
Yeah.
with that.
Okay.
That way of thinking.
Okay,
Yes.
so it makes it tricky from a motion standpoint, but, David, do you have?
Well, I made, you know, I was looking at the agenda item, but in looking at the certification form that is being asked to be signed, it does specifically refer to a grant.
Are there security measures that can be done through that?
Well, if they do get the funds through Florida Housing Finance Corporation, there are plenty of strings attached to the funding that they get from Florida Housing, that the CRA can be comfortable that they will get the product that they have been presented, that has been presented to Florida Housing.
So it's redundant?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable.
Are you asking me to amend my motion?
I'm not
You're
asking
getting
you
good at
to.
this.
If you want to, you would amend your motion to provide
I'll
for
ask.
the $640,000 grant.
I will amend my motion as stated by our board attorney. to be a
Seconder,
grant.
seconder agrees?
Second.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion on this from the board?
I think it looks cool and necessary.
I think this fits right in with the mission of the CRA, and we're very happy to welcome you to the city because, as you can tell, we need affordable housing, and this is a definition of a blighted neighborhood down there, and this will really perk things up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're, I think, feeling good about this.
Thank you.
I'll just say anything on Dixie Highway in certain areas makes a lot of sense to me. No pickleball court?
Well, we've talked about that. We put pools in where we can. Almost every project has a pool. I don't know if we can fit one here, but pickleball's the big talk, and so I've never played it. I'm looking forward to it, but no, it's.
You might look at the elevation too, because we're pretty high here in Lake Worth. You may not need to worry too much about flooding. So before you get too far, get your elevation certificate and see what, you know, how your design works with that.
Yes, yeah, we will do that. Thank you.
And the retention pond, is that something you feel that civils will require, or?
You know, I don't know, I'm a civil engineer. I used to
Yeah.
design this kind of stuff.
Okay.
I know that the Bohemian does not have one.
Right.
And I don't know if it's underground or if it was already impervious, so they got credited. And of course, this site is almost all impervious, so we might not have to do that. And if we don't have to do it, we won't.
Yeah,
We-
because
we-
there can be some liability associated with that too, you know. If
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
you know.
Yeah.
So, just my thoughts, but, so board, good? Any comments from the public? Mayor? Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for the presentation.
Yep.
Hi, Mike, good to see you. I met with Mike recently with Joan about this. This is a project that Joan knows I've been haunting the city and the CRA to get this piece of property since the man that owns it is an old dear friend and client of mine. And when he said he was selling, I'm like, we have got to get this. And I was delighted when Mike came with it. And the other thing I think that the city needs, those of us that want to age in place have no place to go. The Towers is full.
Yep.
So the fact that it's, for over 55 talks to me with disabilities. I'm glad that you're all in favor of this. It's really an exciting project, and it will. The other thing too about it's on the bus line, And in terms of, you know, older people that need help changing light bulbs and things like that, there's a big workforce right around. That whole community has a lot of people that this would help with jobs and stuff. So I'm not in love with the architecture. I made that clear to Mr. But I do support this project, and I'm glad that you are as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments from public? Seeing none, all those in favor, please state so by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Thank you for your patience, and thank you. We're on action agenda D, agreement with Florida Housing Coalition. Is this you, Joan?
Yeah, that's me again.
Thank you.
Wait, there's two. Yeah, so, sorry, just gathering my thoughts. One of the things that we're realizing, I think, in Lake Worth is what I mentioned before, and having a strategy that kind of, I don't want to say attacks, but kind of attacks affordable housing on different levels. And so we have the single-family kind of home project that we do with our nonprofits. We have opportunities like this where we get to work with a developer who's building a 100% low-income housing tax credit project. And then the other thing that we have an opportunity to do is to actually buy down units. And it's also called right sizing, according to Florida Housing Coalition. So Stephen Beal, who works for the Florida Housing Coalition, came down here maybe about a month ago. We met with Donna and Brendan and Commissioner Malega and the mayor. I'm sorry he didn't get to meet all of you, but if he is hired, then he will get to meet all of you. And one of the things we talked about is there are a number of projects that are either planned or in planning right now that are either going to eventually go to planning and zoning or potentially even the city commission that are market rate units that potentially, if the city wanted to and the CRA wanted to, we could use some of our affordable housing money and buy down those units. That means instead of a person paying, let's just take it real simple, $1,000 a month, we could buy them down so they would only pay $800 a month. And we would put a deed restriction on the property, and it would kind of go along with the chart that Michael handed out saying, okay, for let's just say 20 years, we're going to require that in exchange for this money, you're going to offer that apartment or that unit at this level in order to get the money up front to do your development. And I've talked to several developers here who have projects that are kind of working their way through the planning process who potentially would be interested in getting some of that money up front, I think. And that kind of serves our purpose of providing some affordable housing. It also mixes people with different incomes in different in different projects, which I think also is important, instead of kind of, you know, taking one area of the city and putting all the affordable housing there. It also helps get what the city wants, which is kind of smaller infill development and more units that are affordable for a longer period of time. So we have asked Stephen and the Florida Housing Coalition to not only kind of come up with different spreadsheets to figure out exactly what that cost is to buy down these units, but to actually teach CRA staff and potentially, you know, some of the board members on what goes into those kind of calculations. And I've seen some of the spreadsheets. There's a lot of them, but our hope was that not only could you know, I learn it, but some other people in our staff learn it. So there's, you know, if anybody ever leaves, then we still have this, you know, the information and the ability to look at projects and potentially buy them down moving forward. And I think using this in concert with the other two ideas, which of course is the single family working with a nonprofit and then working with, you know, LIHTC project or something similar like that. If we kind of pool all these different kind of resources together and do all these different kinds of ways to buy down units, then we'll have a much better success rate of getting more affordable units versus doing one or just the other. So Florida Housing Coalition has come up with a scope of services that we worked on together, and I would like to move forward and hire Stephen Beal specifically from the Florida Housing Coalition to come down here to show us how to do the different buy downs and and also train us at the CRA and potentially some people from the city as well on how we go about buying down or right-sizing the subsidy for affordable housing projects.
Thank you, Joan. Okay, is there a motion on this item?
Thought Carla was gonna save me from myself. Sure.
You're on a roll.
I know, the only one I got through was the minutes. I must have missed something, David didn't catch it. I would like to move that we approve the attached proposed agreement with Stephen Beal and the Florida Housing Coalition and take funding from the professional services line item on our budget and any necessary signatures to effectuate the agreement.
That sounds perfect to me.
Oh,
Any
see.
second?
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the board on this particular item?
I just have a
Yeah,
question.
Carla.
Would this gentleman be part of your staff, or this is gonna be a contractual obligation that he comes and teaches you what you need to know?
Yes, he's not gonna be a member of our staff now.
Is this an open-ended, or is it a short term, or
It's a short term. Mhm.
Short term, and what's the term again?
There's no direct term, there's no specific term. What it is that he will come down, show us the spreadsheets, and then help us with the first few projects, and after that, we're on our own.
Okay. I have a question about the per project evaluation. I think this is a fantastic initiative, but what I'm having trouble wrapping my head around is exactly the dollar amount. I see here on the backup that the develop a detailed spreadsheet model for staff to evaluate the gap financing needed to buy down units and development timeframe 60 days from contract execution, cost of $21,000. Then we have train staff on use of model 90 days from contract execution, $5,000, and then per project evaluation within 21 days of request, $10,000. And then it, at the very end, in addition to the timeline and fees outlined above, the lead consultant will travel to meet with staff, board, and other community stakeholders as requested prior to completion of deliverables 1 and 2. Compensation up for this trip will be up to $2,500. My understanding is that we're approving 26 to 28,500.
It's 36,000
36
total, in total.
Walk me through that breakdown of the 36,000, please.
Sure. So we have the detailed spreadsheet model, and we'll probably do, I would like him to come down here first and meet all of the board members and get your input. And then we would work out the spreadsheets for, potentially different projects that we have going on, provide recommendations. He also thought it was important to come up with like a summarized spreadsheet model so people in the public and people on the commission or the board can understand those things. Also coming up with an operational manual to add to our policies and procedures on affordable housing, and that's also included. And then train staff on the use of the model, which is $5,000. And included in that would be our first few projects. After that, if we wanted to do a larger project evaluation, let's just say downtown, then that would be $10,000. But that's not necessarily something that we have to approve now. It could be something we approve in the future, or we can just approve it now and then just come back if and when we do need that.
So the $10,000 in this, you're saying, 36,000, right? How many projects would we get evaluated for 10,000? Is it just one project, or is it like all the projects that we have going on right now?
No, we said 2 to 3.
So for $10,000, we could get 2 to 3 projects evaluated. Okay, and you would like that right off the bat? Because you feel it's necessary and it's a great opportunity to apply what you're going to be learning.
I think what they bring to the table is something that we really need to figure out what potentially that gap financing is, not just for affordable housing, but for but for development in total. And I also think that they have great connections as far as finding out other sources of funding and knowing the right people to talk to at the right time for those kind of fundings. And I think that kind of stuff, the relationship that we're building with them and the building with other people is just something that you can't actually put a price tag on. But I think that I think it would do the city and the CRA a great deal of benefit to have somebody come in, teach us how to do this, and then we can explain better to the public how we come up with numbers when we're moving forward with, you know, either giving subsidy or, you know, supporting a project.
You see 2 to 3 projects. Do you already know what 2 to 3 projects you would like to present to the consultant with the $10,000?
I think that's a board decision. I would come back to you before I handed anything to him. I don't know what's going on in downtown, for example. That might be one of them, but I don't know that yet because Treasure Coast hasn't finished.
Carla.
Okay, recently Joan sent us an email, and it talked about Palm Beach County Affordable Housing Needs Assessment, and it also talked about racial equality. And I must have spent a couple hours going through all the things that they said, and I wrote notes and all of this. And one thing that I decided was I need help to get from here to where I need to understand what exactly goes into affordable housing. We all think that it's such a great idea, but we don't know the mechanics of it. And I think that this would give Joan and us an opportunity to be able to ask someone who knows. It's almost like teaching a person how to fish. You know, you teach them how to fish, they can get your own fish. And that's what I want him to do for us, to teach us so that when we evaluate a project or we have questions about a project, we'll know the right things to ask, but also to be able to explain it to the people that we serve. And so $36,000 is a deal for the knowledge that they're gonna hold on to for years. You know, it may seem like a lot, but in the scheme of things, we just gave somebody an forgivable loan of $640,000. It's a grant. You know, so, yeah, grant, that's right, a grant. I was thinking of the loan, but a grant. And so for us to say we're gonna get the knowledge that we need to proceed in the future is for this amount of money, it's not a lot, but that's my opinion.
And Donna and Brendan both had the chance to meet with him, so if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, sure. You know, obviously I found him to be exceptionally knowledgeable in this space. And, you know, these are complex programs, you know, when and Joan will definitely attest to the fact that I am not a huge hire consultant type of person. So this might actually be the first time I've gone on record supporting hiring a consultant, but I also know that navigating these programs requires some hand-holding and support. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of support from the community and the commission to develop initiatives like this, so I would be in favor of it.
Absolutely, me too. I had some great conversations with Stephen when we met, and was really impressed by his background and his knowledge and expertise. And then I had a follow-up conversation with him, just one-on-one phone conversation. He was really eager to help us, and I think one of the messages that he put across is how important it is to get the subsidies right. So right-sizing the subsidy, understand what that is, and it's not that easy to do. So I think we'd all really benefit, and it's, as we know, you know, how to best pass on that knowledge, I think will really serve us in the long run. So I'm all for it and look forward to working with him.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
I'm still just unsure how much we're committing to. Just in the, I think it's fantastic. I think it's great, but the dollar amount that we're approving is $36,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Are we ready to go to public comment on this?
Has anybody left?
We're down to two loyal fans. Okay, all in favor, please state so by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries unanimous, thank you. We are looking
Blazing
good. We are on to the executive director report, which I'm told will only be 5 minutes.
I have to read really fast. I just wanted to thank the board. We had 2 home dedications this month, 127 South F. Thank you, Carlos, so much for coming and welcoming our new homeowner. And also 322 North E, which is the Habitat Veterans Build one. Thank you, Daniel, so much for showing up and doing that. We also had 2 resales this past month. It was an 80% or below family moving into South D Street, and then 120 or below family moving into one of the arts lofts we have on Lucerne. Day of the Dead was this past weekend. Thank you so much to Daniel for emceeing. He was absolutely amazing.
It was a lot of fun.
Good, I'm glad you had fun. And thank you, Donna, for volunteering, and for all of you who came. It was a great success. It was not without a lot of hiccups, but we were able to pull it off again this year, our 7th year. So thank you so much to everybody and to all of our supporters, people who came, and also people who helped sponsor it. Upcoming, we have Small Business Saturday event on January 26th. It's shop local in the downtown. We'll be putting up some banners, putting up specials on social media, and there's also going to be a band in the Cultural Plaza that night before we do the tree lighting along with the city. Another show we have coming up is the community show, where we show only local artists, and we are taking applications now until the end of December, and that show takes place in January. I don't know if it probably was dark when you came in here. I just wanted to say thank you to Chris and to the rest of the staff. The building is all lit up for the holidays. I think it looks really fantastic, and it's nice bright lights here on the other side of the tracks. As far as 1213, which is going to be the Youth Mentoring Center, we have signed, as you know, with Stewart and Shelby to do that development. We are just now waiting for permits to come from the city, and we will get started on that. And then last but not least, I just wanted to say that if there are board members who would like to put things on the agenda, I don't want anybody to think that these meetings are my meetings, because they're not. They're your meetings. So, please bring up things that you would like to discuss. Please bring up programs you would like us to look at. We do not set policy. We are here to carry out the policy that you guys set and the programs and projects that you set. If there's any questions that you have, you can reach me at any time. I can, I can even meet you after work or on the weekends if necessary. I want you to take this board like you feel you are a part of it. This is you, and this is, the programs and projects that we come out with moving forward are going to be from you. They're not from staff. So I just wanted to give everybody that information and tell you to please feel free to contact me at any time. Thank you.
Joan,
Thanks, Joan.
thank you. We'll move on to board member comment, and we will start right to left.
I have no comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Carla.
Well, I was hoping everyone stayed so I could thank them for filling the room. And now they're all gone home.
Daniel?
But it was-
No comment.
Thank you for a really great meeting.
I'm always encouraged when we see the mayor and commissioners, especially some new faces. And I'd like to thank the public who stayed till the bitter end, so thanks for attending. And the Day of the Dead was a phenomenal festival, and it's grown beyond all what I ever expected when I went to the first one. So great effort by staff, and I'd also like to recognize Joan and her staff, small but mighty. You guys get a lot done.
Yeah.
Thank you, and I just want to say a caveat, that's my sister there, so that she's.
So she's not quite the
She's my
public.
driver.
No,
She's
I'm
a
giving her too much
public.
credit.
Yeah, I did want to bring that up about why the meeting minutes weren't, I found it strange that we didn't have meeting minutes from the last meeting, and it was 2 months ago, so, what's the deal on that?
Emily's away on vacation. She'll be back next week, and we will get them to you at our next meeting.
Yeah, let's just make sure that we have up-to-date meeting minutes. I feel like it's kind of a small lift there, but yeah, great job, really good projects, and although I'm disappointed about the demolition by neglect that happened with those cottages, I just also want to say I live on South L, 226 South L. My house was in complete disrepair, and it was leaning, and I bought it, and for not much money, $125,000, I restored it to, and it got a prize for the Historic Preservation, gave me a prize for it. So I have 100% firsthand knowledge of how what a renewable, sustainable resource we have. Wood can be replaced. You can replace members of, structural members. When somebody says something is, condemned and can't be brought back as far as wood goes, it's the reason why we have all these cottages. They're continually renewed and restored. And if we were to demolish every building that happens to have some termite rot, or we would have nothing left. We would be destroying our heritage. So I just had to go on record to say that. Sorry.
Thank you, everybody, for a good meeting, and it was always nice to see a good audience. Appreciate everybody on the board following the Robert's Rules of Order. I promise I'm not being rude, but it is an effective way of running a meeting. You can Google it if you'd like and learn, if you're not familiar with it, learn the different terminology, but that is the way we run this meeting, and we're not changing. So I appreciate everybody, having the patience to work through that. Thank you. Look for a motion to adjourn.
Ooh, I'll move.
Motion, second. All in favor?
Aye. Adjourn.
Thank
Aye.
you, everybody.